if you ever open up your high school yearbook, you have those superlatives. Well, I don't even know if they still use them, but they had superlatives. This is going to be a preseason superlative episodes where I'm going to start giving out awards of what I think is going to happen in the 23 season. I'm going to look at different positional groups and sort them out with some different awards. We'll get into that on today's show.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On BC. I'm your host, AJ Black. Happy Wednesday, everyone. We're getting closer to ACC Media Days, which to me means the start of college football talk and really getting into that, swing of things for college football. But right now, what the mode that we're in, there's lots of different magazines and websites that have come up with their predictions. Well, on Friday's episode last week, Phil Steele had his magazine, and I talked about some of the things that he said. Now, I'm going to go high schoolish on you on this one. I'm going to go and get into some different superlatives I want to give out preseason of what I think is going to happen. And I don't know if superlatives is the right word since it hasn't actually happened yet, but these are some of the awards I want to give out. So today we're going to go over the most improved unit, the biggest surprise, and which unit we are most concerned about going into 2023. So let's kick this off. The most improved unit. And I've seen folks say it, and I think it was Football Fan that said it in our comment section last week. With this unit, they finished last in everything. There's only one way to go but up. But I'm going to get into why I think they're going to be improved, and that is the offensive line. The offensive line, as fans have said, has no other way to go but up. There's no way that they could get worse than they did last year. We've beaten this to the ground over the last 7 months. When you have backups, you didn't get guys in the transfer portal, you lost Christian Mahogany. It was a tough year for the Eagles, and it was one of the most brutal seasons for one specific unit I've ever seen at Boston College. And I've covered the Troy Flutie, Jeff Smith quarterback fiasco, 2012's Frank Spaziani defense. I'm sure there's other ones I can think of as well that just were a complete mess. This was by far the worst. And so going into this season, you have to have higher expectations because you're getting back All-American guard of Christian Mahogany. I was looking at Phil Steele's magazine again. He has Christian Mahogany as a second-team All-American coming off of that knee injury that kept him out of the 2022 season. You're putting him next to Drew Kendall, who was All-American freshman, and I forget who put that up, but highly regarded. And one of the guys that Mitch on our site has said he made a lot of progress. You have Ozzie Trapillo at tackle, who I think with better weapons or better play around him will be great. Good or great. Remember, we're just 1 year removed from me talking to scouts that said Ozzie Trapillo was going to be the next first-round draft pick out of Boston College. I still think there's a potential that he will improve. He's only played for a year and a half. He's got another year behind him. That's going to be good. Kyle Hergel. Again, when you look at the bad play last year, it was a mess everywhere. There were the two guard positions were both a complete disaster. The tackle positions weren't much better. Trapillo was better, but when you had like Jack Conley out there or Dwayne Alec or, Jackson Ness, Nick Thomas, they were struggling. Now you bring in, and I think this is the interesting part, you bring in Logan Taylor, and he's probably your biggest question mark on that line right now. You want to see him play. You want to see him do well. But as we've seen on film from the UVA last year, he's not as polished as what you're going to get with Kyle Hergel. Kyle Hergel is a guy that's played it quite a bit. I think he'll be fine. Logan Taylor, on the other hand, is someone who hasn't done a lot yet. He's played, but he still needs to improve. And that's a worry. But I think this is where the improvement on this line will really shine. Is that behind him, You now have tons of guys that can push each other. You have Jude Bowery, who's up to 300 plus pounds. He was 270-ish last year, which is not enough to be an ACC level offensive lineman. Staff is really high on him. This is a former 3-star from St. Francis Academy. He'll be ready to play. You've got Kevin Klein, who missed almost all of last year with a knee injury. He's ready to play. You've got Jack Conley, who plays all sorts of different positions. He's played for years. And yes, there are limitations on what he can and can't do, but he's played. So you get that there. And then you've got other names of guys that have also played. Like you can plug in a guy like Jackson Ness at center if something was to happen to Drew Kendall, or move Hergel over and move in a Dwayne Alec at guard, or whatever you have to do. But you've got guys now that have significant experience. You have guys on your roster that should be able to do some things. You have depth for the first time in 2 years. You're never going to have at a college level, unless you're Alabama, a 3 deep of guys that are all going to be starters. But what you have at Boston College now is a first team that should be exciting to watch. That should be a marked improvement over last year. And then you have backups that hopefully have improved because they've gone through it. They went through it last year, right? But on top of that, you have depth there. You have guys that you can plug in then. And that's what should make this offensive line the most improved unit on this team. That is what makes this unit, I think, the biggest improvement on, I think this group is going to be an asset. I read it yesterday on Monday's episode, or Friday's episode. Phil Steele said that the offensive line will be the most improved unit in the country. High praise. That's not just me. And that could mean a lot of different things, but I think Phil is saying that this unit could be pretty good. And so they get my vote for that. And in terms of back, my runners up, I'd put the running back position there because they obviously didn't do much last year. I'd also put the linebackers. I think the linebackers are primed for a big year. You've got Vinny DePalma, you've got Cam Arnold and Bryce Steele, and maybe some Jalen Blackwell thrown in there as well. All of these guys should be improved and ready. Vinny DePalma has been around a long time. I don't think you're going to see a ton of improvement there. But the rest of the guys, I think they're going to be good to go. So in a moment, I want to get into my thought of which unit could be the biggest surprise. And I could have put linebacker there, but I didn't. I'll get into who that group will be in just a moment. But before we do that, take your first swing at betting Major League Baseball on FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets, up to $200. That's right. Just bet $20 and you'll land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That's $200 you can spend betting everything from the money line to the over-under, who you think is going to hit the first home run. Do you think that Kyle Schwarber is going to hit a home run for Philly? Or that Aaron Judge is going to hit one for New York? You'll get the odds there. It's easy. You find the guy you're looking for. Boom. You've got your bet right in there. And it's all in the app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. There's no better place to bet on Major League Baseball than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get up to $200 in bonus bets. It's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, the official betting partner of Major League Baseball. This is Locked On BC. I'm your host, AJ Black. I'm also the editor and publisher of Eagle Insider, part of the 247 Sports Network. We've set records, a site like specific records with biggest growth. Our site has grown so much. I want to thank each and every one of you that have joined. If you have not done so already, I hope you consider becoming a VIP. Cost a cup of a coffee for a month. And we've had, I just put up a basketball big board. I talked to some basketball recruits that BC is looking at. We got Mitch doing positional previews that are, 4,000 words long. You can get all that for like $5 a month, $6 a month right now. Join up. It's I'm telling you, my coverage is better than Starbucks. Get in there, get some of that. And if Starbucks wants to be a sponsor, I apologize. Any coffee group, that'll do it. All right. So I then sat down to myself and said, okay, so you have positions that you're feeling good about. You have positions that you're a little worried about. And then you have positions that might surprise you. And you have groups that maybe you have pegged to play at a certain level that might exceed your expectations to get to that next level. And so when I'm looking at Boston College, I was wondering what positional group will be the biggest surprise. Wide receivers wouldn't be a surprise. I'm expecting them to be pretty good. Linebackers, I could have put, the linebackers could fit in a lot of these. I think, honestly, all three categories that we have on today's show, I think the linebackers could fit in that. You could look at the special teams. They could be a surprise. But for me, I'm going to go with the defensive line. Now, David Hale and I said this on Friday's episode, David Hale of ESPN put up a stat that Donovan Nazaraku is one of the best pass rushers in the ACC. But as a unit, BC had real trouble getting to pressure on the quarterback without blitzing. Now, they lost Marcus Valdez. They lost Chibuzi and Wuka. They are now gaining back Sheeta Salah. Sheeta Salah, 6'5", defensive end who's been out most of the last 2 years. He's coming back for one more season. You push inside, you get Chris Banks, George Rooks, and Cam Horsley, along with Quan Williams, and you got some decent depth there. What I think is going to be a big difference maker, pending health is there, is when you have some good size on that defensive line. You're replacing Chibuzi and Wuka, who was 5'10", 5'11", and Marcus Valdez, who was as an edge, was 5'10". And nothing against Marcus Valdez. I thought he was a tremendous player at times, but he's what he is. He wasn't going to ever take a huge step up. Now, what you're replacing them with are some intriguing players. As I said, Salah. I hate going with potential because sometimes when you go with potential, you end up getting burned. Salah has been potential for years, but he hasn't yet done anything. But if he can keep it healthy, he could be a very important player for Boston College. You line him up across from Donovan Nazaraku, and now you have two potentially really good defensive ends that can get pressure on the quarterback, and not just on one side where the offenses can scheme around it. You have that piece there. And I really like the depth that they have up and down this line. Between Edwin Kalengi and Neto Ekpala and, they've got some other younger guys on the edge that could play. And at defensive tackle, we've talked about, Quan Williams and Cam Horsley, but watch for Nigel Tate. We've been looking for a big spark plug up the middle, and Tate missed all of last year. This is a guy that's a redshirt freshman. He's over 320. I think he's like 6'2", 6'3". Bigger dude. He could do some things for your defensive tackle position that you haven't had for a long time. I expect this unit to play better. And one of the reasons why I think they'll also play better is that they're not playing. This is not a shot at them, but they also have a schedule that kind of eases them into it and allows them to get some pressure and play better because they're not playing against great offenses. When you look at their schedule and you're talking about like good offenses, they've got Florida State and then a bunch of question marks. Louisville, they could absolutely take that step if Jack Plummer becomes really good. And you look, Miami, obviously you have Tyler Van Dyke can figure things out, but BC is playing one of the weakest offensive schedules out there in college football. And that could be a big boon for this group. Not only do I expect that Donovan Nazaraku is going to continue to grow, but you might see another player step up. When offenses have to focus on a guy like Donovan, they're going to have other favorable matchups out there that they can exploit. Because if you're doubling up Donovan Nazaraku because he's getting to the quarterback too much, then all of a sudden there's going to be someone else that's getting single coverage, that's just getting chipped, that's going to give them a big advantage there. So I'm expecting this defensive line to be a big surprise for BC. They're not getting a lot of respect other than Azaraku, but I think the group as a whole might be something that will be a surprise to a lot of folks heading into 2023. Now, in our final segment, I want to go over something that I'm concerned about. A unit that I think needs to step up, and I don't know if they have the ability to do that. We'll get into that in just a moment. This is Locked On BC. I'm your host, AJ Black. So every season since Jeff Hafley has been here, there has been like an Achilles heel to the team. 2020, it was COVID. There was a lot of like weirdness. Just the year itself was weird. It's almost like a lost year, right? But 2021, it was the quarterback. You didn't have a quarterback behind Phil Dracovic. He goes down. Dennis Grosel, God bless his soul, was just not the answer. And the BC's offense struggled because of it. Last year, I mean, how many times do I have to say it? It was the offensive line again, right? So I go into this season. I think a lot of folks out there listening to this probably do the same thing, where you're going, okay, so what is going to be the weakness this year? It just seems to be something that happens with Jeff Hafley. So that's got to be somewhere. What are we missing that could be the Achilles heel to the 2023 season? And I look at the different positions, and folks might be, so I bet a lot of folks out there are going to the offensive line. As I said before, I have good faith that they're not going to be that weakness. Linebackers, sure, they've underperformed. Maybe they could be it. Maybe you're looking at like the running backs. Maybe you just haven't seen it yet, so you're just thinking they can't do it. To me, when I look at just like biggest question marks and ones that are going to have to take that biggest step to make sure that they play at that top level, is the secondary. You are replacing 4 starters from last year between Jaden Woodbay, Jason Maitre, Josh DeBerry, and CJ Burton. Now, if you're like, they started and stopped at different positions and different weeks, but those are guys that are 4 big contributors to your team. So you now have to replace them. And 2 of them you're looking to replace them with are FCS players. Again, question mark. Alex Washington and Victor Nelson Jr., they haven't played at the ACC level yet. We don't know what they are going to do. And you're adding in Kari Johnson, a transfer who hasn't played all that much for Arkansas. You're also adding in, Amari Jackson. You're going to add him with more responsibilities, and Cole Batson with more responsibilities. For a group that that's going to have to thrive on communication, this is going to be a giant task for Azar Abdul-Rahim, the defensive backs coach and defensive coordinator. Communication is going to be so important with this group, and they're all just starting to learn to work together. That's a concern. Now, as I said earlier, they're not playing very many good offenses. So you might see them struggle against Florida State, or maybe they have one other game where they're really looking overmatched. But when you're playing the NIUs, the UConns, even Army, who is trying to figure out a new offense, this group could be fine. But I still think it's reasonable to think that this is the weakest group or the most concerning group on this team. There's just so many question marks, and you have to wait for the games to be played before you can say like, okay, they're going to be better. I can't just sit back here and say Alex Washington is going to do great against ACC level wide receivers, or Victor Nelson's, he does a great job of mixing in run and pass coverage. That's all stuff that we're going to have to wait and see what happens. And you've got other guys out there like Jalen Cheek and Bugs Jones that we haven't seen much of, but could also play a role. As Jeff Hafley has said before, he loves to get in multiple defensive backs and roll them in and out. So a lot of new names. And when you have a lot of new names, that's a bit of a concern, because you're going to be waiting to see new things happen. Now, on Friday's show, we're going to dive into some more details about this upcoming season, look at our schedule, talk about anything else that's popped up. You want to make sure you're following me on Twitter at AJBlack247. I'm also on Threads. I don't know how to use Threads yet. I swear to God, I go on there. I've got like 300 followers already, which is great. Hey, I just started this app like 2 days ago. But whenever I go on the feed, all I see is like Paris Jackson and the FaZe Clan and, a bunch of crap I don't care about. But hopefully Mark Zuckerberg will figure it out so that we can actually just follow the groups and people that we want to, because right now I can't see anything. I feel like half time I'm on there, it's all just people I don't want to see. But if you're on Threads, follow me. I'm at AJ Black 247, or you can follow the site, and that's on there at Eagle Insider as well. Again, we'll be back on Friday. We're only a couple of weeks away from ACC Media Day. I'm getting excited about it. I bet you are too. Thank you all so much for listening, and take care. We'll see you all again soon.